Hey, didn't quite see you there. Today, on a very special episode, if you may, of Connor Talks About Games. Is that what we're calling this, actually, by the way? Anyway, on a very special episode of my YouTube channel today, we are going to be tearing apart Catan. No, in all seriousness, the main event or main occasion for today's video is that I'm going to be attempting to record this all in one day. So hopefully I should have the same like outfit on for the entire thing. And the other thing I just want to mention before I get into this video is that this is by no means a video telling people to never play Catan again. I'm not trying to gatekeep a board game. That would be actually extremely cringe. The main purpose of this video is just for me to analyze the game, talk about my perceived issues with the game, all of that good stuff, and honestly, it's gonna come back around to talking about the game being kind of good. So just hear me out, okay? I'm not about to light this game on fire. I mean, I will a little bit, but like,
was a revelation to me.
We'll never play this game again. I got fucking 2 points. He's got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Catan is a big deal, y'all. Like a really big deal. Unless you've been living under a rock or never been to a family friend's house in your life, you've most likely at least heard of Catan, if not played it. I think it's fair to say that Catan is the modern Monopoly, or it's at least on its way there. Quite honestly, I can live with that. As a society, we did much better this time because Catan is a better game than Monopoly, so we have that going for us. So in the early 90s, board games and especially Eurogames were very different, especially in America. While some games were around and making their mark in the early 90s within their own niches of tabletop gaming like Magic the Gathering and Warhammer, the Eurogame was essentially non-existent. For the uninitiated, a Eurogame is a type of board game where competition doesn't directly take place between 2 or more players. Some common themes in Eurogames are resource generation, resource management, politicking, and engine building. Now, this genre, like any other genre of literally any other art form, isn't just stagnant and has variance within its games. Eurogames now cover a wide variety of themes and mechanics, allowing for any player to find a game within the genre to enjoy. To bring this all back to Catan, I think in a timeline where Catan doesn't exist, these games might still actually be made at some point or another. The difference in that timeline might be that I might just not be playing them. And the reason for that is because Catan kind of blew up. It kind of went viral, you know? Like a TikTok, you know what I'm saying? I think even though Catan is what made Klaus Teuber rich, it may not actually be his masterpiece. By the time Klaus got his Spiel des Jahres for this game, he had already won 3 others. So it's not like, you know, it's this first guy's first time making the best board game of the year. It's actually his 4th. No big deal, you know, no biggie. Just happens. Not only did Catan win the Spiel des Jahres that year, but the game was actually a streamlined version of its original idea. According to this article by Vice, Teuber states that there was more exploring, knights, and even cities, which obviously came in expansions later. I realized I had to reduce it to either exploring or to settling. As the original title suggests, exploring was sidelined, although this was also explored in another expansion. To be honest, I actually do really like Catan with its expansions, but playing the vanilla game for me is a little rough. As I'll be going into later in this video, the vanilla game and all the expansions really realistically carry the same issue, but the original game just has a metric frick ton of issues, so but those issues make the game really accessible, so don't worry, I'll be coming back to this later, but just keep that in mind for now. In short, I propose that Catan is not really famous because it's a mechanical masterpiece. It's actually famous because its mechanics were so good at making players love Eurogames that it essentially kickstarted an entirely new board game market outside Germany and Europe in general. And for better or worse, its ability to do this all comes down to how simple its rules are. Had the game been more complicated, the fuse may have not gone off in different areas of the world. You have to remember that America's popular board games at the time mostly resulted in players slowly and painfully getting eliminated from the game. The enjoyment of Monopoly, Risk, and Sorry all bank on you really screwing someone else over. So having a game that completely changes that way of thinking, well, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. And I can't really go into talking about the... Wait, hold up. I know I totally just ruined your immersion, okay? But since 6 months ago, I did not record a proper transition, okay? So I had to edit this in. I'm sorry, okay? Please forgive me. It is my New Year's resolution to never do this again. But anyway, I can't really start talking about the positives of Catan without praising it. I guess that's how that works, right? That brings me to my next section of this video. Just roll it.
Catan is arguably the cardinal board game responsible for the reinvigoration and rebirth of tabletop gaming. More than any other game, this is the one that people will cite as the gateway game that got them into the hobby.
Catan actually does a lot of things right, and most importantly, it really drives home the politics and resource management that most Euro games have. The strong parts of Catan are strong because they are the base of most Euro games, and a lot of other games just take them and do it a bit better. The first thing that Catan does really well is its political game. Catan does a great job at introducing impact on other players' turns. In the classic games that most Americans were used to in the 90s, it was either your turn or it wasn't. Catan, on the other hand, has players interacting even if it isn't your turn through trading. This forces players to be engaged even if it is not their turn. And most importantly, if they aren't paying attention to trades and who has which cards, they will almost certainly be punished for it by the end of the game. Catan's trading rules are also pretty simple. Only the player whose turn it currently is can initiate a trade, and each card must be traded for another card. So for example, you can't trade 5 cards for 1. Although I kind of hate that last rule. That's not like a game design thing per se, it's a me thing. I know it's stupid. Like in the comments, people are gonna be like, what are you talking about, Connor? I've definitely broken that rule before. I actually just found out about it recently. I love that shit. You trade like 5 cards for 1, it's sick. Either way, trading in Catan is really easy and it really helps new players get used to the more economic-based gameplay that Catan and many other Euro games go for in their design. Another big concept that Catan introduces to people who are new to Euro games is no one being eliminated from the game during gameplay. A lot of the classic games are basically a fight to be the last person standing. Most, if not every Euro game, never eliminates players from the game. That way, players are always involved. Even if you are losing horribly in Catan, you can usually, emphasis on usually, you can usually find a way to have some sort of influence over the game. Any ability to play the game instead of straight up just not being allowed to play is a win in my book. I personally believe these two concepts to be the absolute most vital to Catan's gameplay. When new players play the game, they feel important because they are always involved and never run the risk of having to sit out for hours while everyone else has fun. This is what drags people into Catan and gets them invested, and honestly probably makes them think that the game is the absolute shit. So this is the part where I complain. So get ready for that.
I think there's a lot of games that came out more recently that do what Catan does, but do it better.
I really do like a game. It's pretty much the only version of Catan that I will willingly play.
How often do you unwillingly play Catan?
I'm just saying, I don't...
We're doing a Catan marathon.
I really hate to say it, guys, but Catan is mid. Catan's like a 5 or like a 6 on a good day, but it's usually like a 5. And its biggest issue is luck. Now, luck is a big buzzword when it comes to games.
I lost the run to RNG, dude. What?
I think for how kind of clearly pretentious I am about board games, you might think that I myself hate all forms of luck, when in fact that actually couldn't be further from the truth. I love chance in games because it can create some extremely special moments. Take a game like Mario Party, for example. Mario Party is a game filled to the brim with luck, but the player has some sort of influence and different options to manage that luck, generally speaking. Obviously, Mario Party will still screw with you all the time, but it gives you different options to play the game. In game design, there are generally two types of randomness. The first is called input randomness. Input randomness is the idea of giving the player many randomly generated options, and out of those options, the player must find the best solution for their situation. So for example, when a player is playing just about any card game, let's just say Magic, for example, your hand would be a type of input randomness. You draw a random set of cards and have to make best with what you have. In Catan, an example of input randomness would be the random generation of the board. The tile layout is generally random, although there is some pseudo-randomness to it. The players are presented with a board and they have to figure out their best options for where they want to place their settlements to best benefit themselves. On the other side of the spectrum is output randomness, which is what most people would just call luck. Output randomness would be something like critical hits, or dare I say, rolling 2 dice to see which resources are generated in a game of Catan. If your numbers do not get rolled, you basically cannot play the game. So all the praise that I gave Catan is largely dependent on factors that are completely out of your control, which essentially means that at its core, your enjoyment of Catan is largely based on luck. One concept that's really important in game design is making sure that players feel as if they are in control. They are making active choices to better their own position in the game. Players often say things like, how am I supposed to beat that? This is so unbalanced, this guy's cracked, whatever. At their core, the player is essentially shifting blame from themselves to the game. The most common form of the shift of blame is luck, because luck is out of the player's control.
No! Instant! Why? I did it perfectly!
When you make your entire game system based on luck, players are going to feel gypped because what were they supposed to do to change that die roll? Now, obviously, statistically speaking, you can set yourself up for what should statistically be a good setup in Catan. Obviously, some numbers are more likely to get rolled than others, which is input luck in a way. But when it truly comes down to it, every die roll in Catan is output luck. How many times have you been playing Catan and been like, a statistics major would love to see this data set, because what the fuck? The more you play Catan, the more these flaws will become very apparent. It won't be the first game or two, but eventually you get a game of Catan where everyone should have just rolled a bit better. Not so that you could have won, but mostly just so you could have done just about anything. Now, even though this type of resource generation is completely fucked, I actually think that this is still fun. Like the video is called, Catan is kind of a disaster, but that's okay. Yes, you read that correctly. I'm going to make the argument that Catan's bad game design is actually a vibe. Catan is a game that I've played a lot with a lot of different people, and that really got me thinking about the game itself. Catan's way of producing resources, while mechanically flawed, does come with a few huge benefits that I've overlooked. That it's just really fucking easy to understand. Like, it's really easy. It's really easy. The benefits of the resource generation being so easy to understand are really important. The first is that players new to Eurogames can learn the social and economic aspect of Eurogames without actually having to worry about making choices about what resources they are producing. Now, I know this might seem like it contradicts everything that I've said in the last 10 minutes. I still stand by the fact that objectively, from a design standpoint, this way of generating resources is pretty garbage. But subjectively, I know your mom thinks this game is the shit, so...
That's a nice argument you got there.
Unfortunately, your mom.
Imagine someone playing Gaia Project or Scythe as their first Euro game. There might actually be too many choices for the player to have. That isn't to say that you can't just jump right into Euro games with Scythe or Gaia Project, but they certainly are much less forgiving than Catan. Catan allows players who are new to the genre to get a feel for the social aspect without having to worry too much about min-maxing their resources every turn. There are a bunch of other games as well that you could really use to introduce players to Euro games. Which one you personally think is best is completely up to you, but what I'm saying is that Catan is not the worst place to start. Additionally, a game having so much output luck can really even the playing field. The more randomness there is in a game, the more a skill gap can be overcome. Thus, someone like me who sits in their basement all day studying board games like a total loser can still be overcome by one of my friends who's just learning the game. That isn't to say that I'm a pro gamer or anything, but I do think that I could most likely manage resources a bit better than some random person who has never played a heavy Euro game before. The point is, Catan might not be the mechanically tightest game I've ever played, but it is a game that you can truly play with almost anyone. It is flawed, but its flaws can allow for you to have some friends over who may not be gamers and vibe. Catan is a game that honestly fascinates me to no end. It's truly a milestone game, but it's still flawed at its core. I feel like I have a lot to thank Catan for, yet at the same time I almost want to throw it into a dumpster. The really crazy, kind of ironic thing is that the full vision described by Klaus is actually kind of realized in the expansions of Catan. Cities and Knights adds in, well, the knights that Klaus was talking about in that interview. My personal favorite expansion is Explorers and Pirates, because it adds actual exploration to the game. You also have many more ways of generating points. The game still has the output luck of resource generation, but it gives you many more ways to actually tackle the game. The main difference is that Explorers and Pirates takes about half an hour to set up and 3 hours to actually play it fully. What you have to understand about Explorers and Pirates is, although it is the fully realized version of Catan, I would argue it's a completely different game than vanilla Catan. Here's what I'll say. The design sense of Klaus Teuber to really streamline Catan was genius. Because without that, the game would not have caught on nearly as well as it did. He's a genius for that. For all of the complaining in this video I've done about Catan, there is actually a version of the game that is more suited towards me. And I do have a lot to thank Catan for. Without it, I may not be as obsessed with board games as I am. So, for those reasons, I have to thank Klaus Teuber for making a shit game. Thank you. Everyone, it's me, Connor, the incredible creator, editor, writer, super employable guy here. I just wanted to thank you for watching, and like if you made it this far into the video especially, I would, thank you so much. It's probably like 4 people, and 2 of them are my parents. So yeah. I recorded most of this video in August, so I've taken my sweet time editing this thing, but it's definitely like my favorite thing that I've made, so I'm really happy with the way it came out and stuff like that. So yeah, once again, thanks. Gonna keep making stuff. Yeah, hopefully this time it won't take me a year to record and edit. Okay, bye. In a weird way. Does that make sense? This whole video actually might not just make any sense. The game is whack, okay? It's got some issues, but those issues are what made it so popular, and because it's so popular, better games can be made. So it's shit, but it's also fucking awesome. That's basically what I'm trying to say, but I don't know, trying to be kind of professional about it.